Michigan star defensive prospect Mason Graham is the top defensive lineman in the 2025 NFL Draft. On today's show, we're going to get into our top 10 rankings and tell you who comes after him. That and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an offensive draft analyst over at Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He is a director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. And as always, thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. We have a fun show breaking down our dueling top 10 interior defensive line list. We're going to talk about the top 3 to start the show. Then we're going to get into tier 2 interior defensive linemen. Who's after Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, whoever in that first tier. We'll talk about tier 2, close it out with tier 3. But before that, guys, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. The top 3 interior defensive linemen, again, dueling top 10s here. Keith has Mason Graham out of Michigan at number 1. He went Michigan back-to-back with Wolverines. At number 2, he has Kenneth Grant, the big 340-pound defensive tackle. At number 3, he has Ole Miss's Walter Nolan. For me, at number 1, I have Mason Graham out of Michigan. I have Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. At number 3, I have Oregon's Derek Harmon. Keith, let's talk about Walter Nolan a little bit. You have Walter Nolan under Kenneth Grant. What did Kenneth Grant show you on tape that had you confident enough to put him over Walter Nolan?
Yeah, so first off, I think they're two totally different defensive linemen stylistically, right? But if you're talking about defensive line and what I initially want, right, is obviously being able to stop the run. And Kenneth Grant, big 330, 340-pound guy, you know he could do that, right? And I think he's scheme versatile as far as what he can do. And I think that may have been more of the why I put him over, right? Walter Nolan, I think this guy's upside or his ceiling, right? He could be the best defensive tackle in his class. But I also think, too, that he has to be put in a specific situation to reach that ceiling, right? I don't think how Ole Miss used him, right, as far as playing a zero tech, him taking on double teams is the best usage of him, right? You want this guy to potentially be in a 4-3 scheme, him to be your 3 tech. You want him getting upfield. You want him penetrating. You want him slanting and being disruptive via that capacity, right? And then seeing him in person, always on the field at the Senior Bowl, he is a guy like a stretch 300. And what I mean by that is he's 290 to 300 pounds, right? And so you're going to have to fight to try to keep him over there because usually you want your defensive lineman, especially your interior defensive lineman, right, to be at that 300 mark. But I think just looking at his body profile and body type, he's probably closer, like I said, to that 288 to 295 range. So that's why I went more, just because I'm talking about stopping the run first. And also I think Kenneth Grant has some pass rushing ability to him. He's a pocket collapser, but I think he has more first step quickness than what people believe. I know this might have been a couple months ago. Now we compared him and Jordan Davis. I like him significantly more than Jordan Davis. I think that he had more body control, and I think he has more actual power in his hands.
Yeah, with me, I look at Walter Nolan and like you use the word disruptive, and I think that's why I have him over a Kenneth Grant. When I look at Walter Nolan, same thing with Mason Graham. To me, when I'm projecting to the league, and both of those guys I think are ideally 3 techs, these are the guys getting the double teams. So I look at Kenneth Grant. Typically, when you see 6'2", 340, 6'3", 340, somewhere in there. Usually, when you see a guy that big with his power, and his natural athleticism that he does have, you're like, yeah, that's the guy getting double teamed. When you turn on the Michigan tape, you're seeing all the attention go to Mason Graham. Even when he has a lot of clean wins in terms of Kenneth Grant, it's like, yeah, you're getting singled up. And I feel like, watching, and even then, I just didn't see a super disruptive guy. When I look at Mason, I see him be able to handle double teams and, corkscrew, disconnect his upper and lower body to fight through and get into the backfield. I see Walter Nolan, and to your point, No, Walter, no, like I don't know what Ole Miss was thinking because they had JJ Bakese, who's 320 pounds as the edge, and I didn't really understand any of the decisions that was going on in Ole Miss because I was like, why isn't he playing 0-1 with his first step quickness, his strength and ability to anchor, and why isn't Walter Nolan playing his actual position? He said at the Senior Bowl, I'm a 3-tech/4-eye. Like that's where you get to play my best ball. And I think that, like you said, the upside is much higher. I think between the two, I think Kenneth Grant I think he's closer to Mason Graham than a lot of people believe. And I mean, I know that there's some stuff about, there was some off the field concern stuff that I tell everybody the same thing, man. It's smokescreen season, baby. Like I'm not, you know what I'm saying, until I get something verified that he was a headache or he did this, or like give me some examples of what you mean. Like there's off the field concerns, and I haven't really gotten any of that from the people I've talked to. It was like, yes, some of the stuff seems fabricated, what have you. It's been a lot of that with the defensive line. It's very, very funny, Keith. It's been happening to the defensive line group. The deepest group in the draft. You got, the Mike Green stuff. We know what that is. But James Pierce Jr., Walter Nolan. There's been a couple guys get hit with just a little bit of character stuff. Sure, you want them to fall to your team. That's what you want. You know what I mean? To drop them down the board. But I look at Walter Nolan. I think this dude has star potential, and then he kind of has proved it at Ole Miss. We talked about him, Princely, like help revamping and changing that Ole Miss defensive front. Mason Graham is, at the end of the day, for me, Keith, when I look at Mason Graham, I don't worry about the arm length nearly as much. Because for one, if I'm watching the tape, I'm like, all right, are you being engulfed by blockers? Are they bear hugging you and you can't separate? Can you not use your hand? Like, no, he knows how to use his hands. He's quick-handed. He's powerful. His punch timing is good. And I'm like, well, where's the concerns? Because if it doesn't show up on tape, I think it wasn't Dave. Was it Dave Canales? It was Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson at the NFL meeting, they did an interview. He said when it came down to arm length, he said, I value tape over measurables. And I was like, that's my type of coach. Because I don't care what your measurables are. If it doesn't show up on tape, it doesn't really matter to me as much.
Yeah, no, so I was just talking with a couple coaches about this with LSU Pro Day. And just in my thought, and this was the statement that I had to kind of match that, right? You tell me if you're worrying about Will Campbell having 33-inch arms or 32.5-inch arms when 320 pounds is coming at you, right? You tell me how much of that half an inch makes a difference for you when 300. Tell me if you're worried about half an inch when you got 330 pounds running at you. So that's the way I could kind of put it into context. But yeah, no, I agree with you on the Kenneth Grant stuff. I just, like I said, I think plug and play. You talk about potentially like the Dallas Cowboys or something like that, and I know they're probably going to run from the conversation of drafting another Michigan defensive tackle, but I think him and Mozzie Smith are totally different. But you look at the Minnesota Vikings. And I believe they signed one in free agency also, but being able to, add another key piece to that, could be
real quick, Keith. I want to ask you with Grant, how do you feel about his ability projecting to the league? Like, cause he didn't see a lot of double teams, more so Mason Graham. He gets into a defensive line room where, not saying he's the best guy because there'll be NFL veterans there, but especially in the run game, like, listen, we got to block the 340 pounder. How do you think he's going to project handling double teams at the next level, since he didn't see it nearly as much as his teammate?
Yeah, I think if I seen him being passive, right, like or seen some of the things that I've seen from Deion Walker in this class, right, and things like that, then I would be worried. But I didn't see that from Kenneth Grant. Like even he didn't take a bunch of double teams, but the single blocks and things like that, you see that. I feel like. You ask me, and DP, I always say this, right? Would I go to war with him? I'll go to war with him, right? Like he has, I think he has a toughness to him. And that's just, that's just a phrase I use for scouting, right? Like he has a toughness to him. And I think you can see that with Kenneth Grant. So I obviously you wish that you did see it on film, but I feel like I got enough of his mental temperament and his mentality through just the 2 years that he, played a lot in Michigan, and battling alongside Mason Graham. But DP, I think what's about to be fun, man, is these tier 2, right? Because I think what our top was kind of chalk, right? Like we kind of agreed on the first 3 to 4 guys. But tier 2 is where things gonna get interesting. So let's jump into this conversation coming up next.
Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. And if you go check the app, the Game Time app, there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Tier 2 interior defensive lineman for the 2025 NFL draft. At number 4, I have Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. At number 5, I have Darius Alexander out of Toledo. At number 6, I have Norman-Lott from Tennessee. At number 4, Keith has it's Omar Norman-Lott. Jesus, I had that mixed up. Omar Norman-Lott. Keith has him out of Tennessee at number 4. At number 5, he has Darius Alexander. At number 6, he has T.J. Sanders out of South Carolina. Keith, Omar Norman-Lott might be, well, not when, because when I look at pass rush ability out of this interior defensive line group, I think it's Walter Nolan, and I think it's the Omar Norman-Lott. I think those are the top 2 guys in terms of single one-on-one. I need a guy that can get in the backfield on 3rd and 8. Let's close this game out. Because he came into the combine, I believe it was 6'2", 290, 300. 33 and 3/4 on the arm. And the bend, the ability to clear the outside shoulder, to turn, fluid hips, quickness, suddenness. I'm like, okay, this is one of those guys that the only question I have is like, okay, how are you going to handle the power or the run game at the NFL level? You know what I mean? Consistently, I think he's going to be ideally a 3-tech for a team similar to Walter Nolan, and he has actually 290. I think he has immense upside as a pass rusher. And, at worst, early in his career, like as a rookie, he comes in as your DPR on 3rd downs, and you got fresh legs with his athleticism, his first step quickness, and twitch. Yeah, like this dude's gonna be a headache for somebody at the next level in those one-on-one situations.
Well, DP, it sounds like you like him, baby. You got to put him higher, man. Put him higher. The reason he made 4 for me, DP, was because of that reason. I think you watched the Florida game and the NC State game, I believe. And you watched this guy finish blocks quicker than any defensive lineman, right? You're talking about the hand counters, hand swipes, 2-hand swipes, rip moves. You just see the immense power. Yeah, the immense power that he plays with also. Like he quickly demolishes offensive linemen. Like it's fast, right? When he activates and it's time to go, it quickly happens to them. One key thing, because I was talking to somebody at the Senior Bowl, and he was telling me a stat about it. I think he only played 40% of the snaps at Tennessee.
They rotated him a lot.
Yeah, they rotate. Like when you watch the game, you'd be like, wait, did he play this game? Because it'd be 15 plays into the game before he takes his first snap, right? And so you watch him, and so he had the sack numbers this year and even the production, and that was with only 40% of the snaps. So it makes you wonder what the upside could be for this guy, right? Like, is he an 8-9 sack a season guy? You know, like what type of production could he provide? I just love his movement skills also. Like, I thought he played with pretty good body control overall, and then the functional strength, obviously that's the strength that's applied. He has that. Like you can tell he's a heavy-handed puncher. We just talked about length, and he's a guy where the length applies, right? Like where you could say some of these guys have 34-inch arms, but you don't see it because they're scared to punch and extend. This guy punches, he extends, and he hurts people. And that's how I want my defensive linemen to just simply hurt people. So I'm in total agreement with you, DP, on Omar Norman-Lott.
Yeah, and honestly, Keith, from a movement skill standpoint, I feel ideally, I think he's a 3-tech. But if a team wanted to bump him on, if you wanted to get him on the field on rundowns, I think he could play some base defensive end at 290. with those 33-inch arms, maybe because he's the type of guy that I think he can put his hand in the dirt on the edge or stand up and defend the run. Then when you really want him against it with 33, almost 34-inch arms and his suddenness, quickness, and twitch. Yeah, I want him against guards because typically guards are the lesser athletes on the field, right? They have lesser movement skills than tackles. That's why they're playing guard, and they have shorter arms. So he has the full advantage of arm length. He knows how to use it, right? He know, like I always say, like the interior line or just a line period. The arm length and wingspan matters only if you know how to box. If you don't know how to box, doesn't really matter, right? Like if you got the reach advantage in the boxing match, if you don't know how to throw your jab and keep the shorter arm guy away from you, he gonna tag your body. That's just what it is, right? Like you got to know how to use your reach, and he knows how to use it. But he has so many other pass rush moves in his bag. The run game stuff, I think that's where teams are probably gonna have to figure out where they want to play him. But I think Darius Alexander, Keith, is just dude's good. He's just good. Like, you know what I mean? He's just good. And he gives you like the best of both worlds. He defend the run. He's a good pass rusher. Even dropping, like they even dropped them off in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, you don't really see 300+ pound guys drop off in coverage, read the quarterback's eyes, and intercept the ball on the throw in the middle of the field. And I was like, okay, you know, Darius, like, go ahead, get in your bag. Show us what you got, big fella. And then he had a good week in Mobile. I think this is a guy, I think for him, I think he can get away with playing 2-eye. I think he's alignment versatile. He can play either the 2-eye, the 3, the 4-eye, maybe some 5 as well. He's got good power. He got a good get off for the most part, can get his hands fitted inside the chest of blockers quickly. And I think that's the reason why I have him a little bit higher than Omar Norman-Lott, is because of the run defense that I know, okay, like we always talk about the floor. Like I think early on, the floor, you can come in and play, right away in terms of the run game. I feel comfortable with your body type, the mass on your frame. I don't want to add no more to Omar because I think that takes away from that. It's going to take away from his movement skills. If you try to bulk him to 305 or 310 and he's 290, you're going to take away from that. I think he's going to be specialized in what he is. But I really like Darius Alexander. I think this is a guy that could be a good player. And I think, we look at back in the first round, the Chiefs need an interior defensive lineman to pair with a guy like Chris Jones. I could see him potentially being a nice fit there.
Yeah, DP, you talked pass rushing defensive tackles, right? You said you would have Walter Nolan, Omar Lott. The third guy I will put in that as far as like pass rushing upside, for me is TJ Sanders. I like TJ a lot, man. TJ is a very fluid mover, maybe one of the most fluid movers in this class. He just like his ability, like the balance and body control once again, and just him. It's like quickness and I don't get. I'm trying to find the right words for it. Just how smooth he is. It might just be that, like just how smooth he gets into gaps and then turns the corner. This guy is extremely fluid as a mover, and that's why I had him at 6 because I'm like, the run game stuff. I think he has to improve on that, especially taking double teams. I think he's another guy that's a prime candidate for just playing 3 tech, right? Like and getting upfield, attacking 4-3 scheme. But you watch TJ Sanders and you see, okay, I see where this guy can make a lot of money in the NFL, and that's being a pass rushing defensive tackle. Now, the other part to his game too is that this guy has a high motor. You watch him, he's a pursuit guy. He's going to chase down running backs, backside. He's going to be 20 yards down the field trying to make a tackle. So you don't have to worry about that box neither. I think it's just a matter of what position do we put him in to take as least amount of double teams, right? And then get this guy getting upfield, like allow him to get upfield and get penetration. But I really like TJ Sanders. I've been liking him since the summer. I went back to the film again and I was like, you know what? I see the same guy. This is kind of like a verification for me. I think this guy can play ball in the NFL.
No, 100%. So I saw him down at South Carolina's Pro Day. And, to me, he looked bigger in person than he does on tape. I think he might have added a couple pounds. He looked closer to 300 than the 290 he was listed at during the season. And even to go back to the combine, his profile at the combine, he came to the combine at 6'4", 297 with 33 and 1/8 on the arm. So I think he might have bulked up a little bit. And I think that, to your point about the run defense, that's where, for me, I have him a little bit lower, not far. Like he's like probably 7th, I think, on my list. So he's going to be listing the next group in terms of like on the top 10 ranking. But I think the pass rush ability is there. But if he's playing around 297, 300, and you can see that he's improved as a run defender, it gives you a clear path to play early snaps. You know what I mean, on first and second down, because his pass rush ability is legit. Like you said, Walter Nolan, Omar Norman-Lott, TJ Sanders is one of the, is that those true just guys that can get after the quarterback, and then Mason Graham is up there because his ability with his hand usage, things like that, and everything that Mason Graham brings to the table, his upside as a pass rusher is there as well. I think with TJ Sanders, I want to see if he plays close to that 300, because if so, we might see an improvement in terms of his run defense and anchoring, because you want to see him, especially against like power concepts. I feel like when he gets driven back, like it's hard to fight off of that, and sometimes shed, like he gets kind of moved off the ball. If he's playing close to the 300, that issue might be corrected, because he looked filled in. He looked bigger in person. He still moved well too. Like it wasn't like, okay, he's big and he's slower, he's sluggish now. Like no, he carried the. And I think something that's big is like the weight you have. How do you carry it? He carried it well. Like, you know what I mean? Like you saw him. He didn't look like his midsection was filled in. He just looked a little bit more muscular, a little bit stronger in his upper body at his pro day. And I was like, okay, this will play. Like this will play, especially on early downs. If you're able to, whether it's at 4-eye or strong or 5 tech, depending on the defensive scheme you get drafted into, that's going to be the big thing for him, is just being able to anchor down against down man power blocks. If he's able to do that, the pass rush ability is there. He going to be an impact player.
Yeah, DP, I look at him and definitely put him in that bucket for that, right? And like you said, being able to be filled out, I think he can add weight. I look at Omar Norman-Lott. I think he can add a couple pounds. Walter Nolan, and that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, would be the guy where I'm like, just kind of keep it right there, because I don't know how the weight added on is going to be distributed. But DP, there's quite a few names for my list, couple from your list that have been big time names that haven't been listed yet, right? We're gonna have to have those conversations, because I think a couple of those names are listed at the very top of people boards, and we have yet to talk about them. So we're gonna talk about those guys coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. We're going to close this thing out with the tier 3 tier defensive lineman, closing out our top 10. At number 7, I had TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. At number 8, I have Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. At number 9, I have Deion Walker from Kentucky. And at number 10, I have Joshua Farmer from FSU. At number 7, Keith has Derek Harmon out of Oregon. At number 8, he has Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Number 9, he has Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. And number 10, he has Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. Keith, Derek Harmon is an interesting one for me, because I had him at 3. I think this dude has not just a lot of upside, but his tape was good to me. And for a guy that's a bigger guy, you know what I mean? 313, 6'4", outstanding arm length at 34 and 3/8, right? Like the power, he ran like a 4.95. He's a good athlete. Transferred in, I believe, from Michigan State to Oregon, and had a breakout season for that Oregon Ducks defense, especially on the defensive line that had DJ Uyunglele's brother, Mateo, who's a potential top 10 pick for next year. And he had Jordan Birch that transfers from South Carolina, had a lot of buzz coming, from the SEC. Their best, to me, he was one of their best. Jordan Birch got hurt, stuff like that. Well, I looked at Harmon, I saw first step quickness, better than some of the other guys that's in the 315, 20-pound range. Power, he handles double teams, he can 2-gap. But if you get him one-on-one, he is a nice finesse move to cross face, kind of cross face with the rip move, get right into the A-gap, get to the backfield against the run, but also into the face of the quarterback. I think this is one of those guys, and the 2 AFC North teams right now he's potentially going to go to in round 1. We'll see if the other one, if he passes if the first team passes him, the Cincinnati Bengals at 17, and then you got at 21, the Steelers. A lot of people in Pittsburgh like him. They like him a lot, but we're gonna see if they say screw it and let's go get a quarterback, to put behind Aaron Rodgers. We'll see. Maybe it's your boy Will Howard. Maybe it's Jackson Dart. We'll see how that plays out. But I think Derek Harmon has some of the best upside in this class at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I agree with you with the upside part of it. I'm gonna go ahead and rope him and Tyleik Williams into the same conversation for me. Well, because both of those guys, I believe in, and you have Tyleek rated in this group too. So you probably join in on me in certain aspects of this conversation. That both of those guys, I thought that they operated in flashes. And that's the part that got me. Like, especially, I'll go to Tyleek and I'll finish up with Derek. So we got this conversation together. With Tyleek, I seen flashes of greatness, right? And then I seen flashes where it kind of disappeared. And I think the conversation, I think his play was reflective of what's been the draft conversation about Tyleek Williams for the past 2 years, right? I think there were moments where people were like, oh man, this guy's a first round grade. And then you just wouldn't hear about him for 2 months. And then the name will pop up again. You're like, oh man, this Tyleek Williams is really good. And then you wouldn't hear about him again. And I think that's just how his play is. So I know a lot of people have him as like in his top, in their top 50s. He could be, a first round prospect. I just didn't see that just because of the consistency across the board, right? Down in and down out type situations. Does he demolish people against the run? Yes, but then there are situations where I see him struggle to give off blocks right in his 3-4 yards down the field, being displaced off the line of scrimmage. With Harmon, I like Harmon better in certain aspects, right? But I kind of viewed him in the same bucket, in the same thing, just the consistency part of it. I thought there were times that Harmon just played with high pad level that kind of concerned me. And we never hear this phrase used with defensive linemen, but waist benders as at defensive line, meaning that do you kind of bend your knees and be able to kind of anchor yourself in a good way to be able to hold. And I think that's what you have to kind of, that's what I look at with some of these defensive linemen. Like, okay, when they're taking on these double teams, when they're taking on just run game period, are they knee benders or are they waist benders trying to lean, right? And usually the knee benders, they could sustain the line of scrimmage. The waist benders, once the offensive linemen get up under them, they usually struggle to kind of detach and those type of things. So it's just that, like, I agree with you on both of the upsides, but it's just, for me, it was just more the inconsistencies that I seen.
Yeah, I think with Tyleek, being a little bit lower for me, like it's the run game stuff I'm fine with him. I know that was his calling card, even when he was just a rotational guy. It was the run game stuff, being that he could be the single gap guy. He showed the flashes of being able to double team, things like that. It's the pass rush for me where I wasn't wild with Tyleek. You know what I mean? Because like you remember, I was high on him. Was it not this past summer, but 2023 summer? I was like, listen, this dude could be a first round pick, stuff like that. And when you look at his pass rush, like he had 3 sacks on the season, right? But it was the simple fact of his pass rush win rate was a 6.6. Like he didn't really win consistently as a pass rusher. Where then I looked at, when you watch Derek Harmon, that ability to play the run, but then the upside of him as a true pass rusher as well. Like on the season, Derek Harmon had 5 sacks, 7 QB hits, 43 pressures. His pass rush win rate was 17.6, but on true dropback sets, it jumped to 27%. He won 27% of his pass rush reps when it was true dropback sets. And I think for me, Harmon had like that upside, that potential is there. You got to find that consistency and everything with him, especially from a pad level standpoint. 6'4", 315, almost 320. He can get a little high at times, like you said, bending at the waist a little bit. You got to work with him in that regard. Tyleek is probably, I truly felt like he should have came out potentially last year, even though he was a rotational guy, because I think we talked about this. When you stay longer, you open yourself up to more criticism for people to pick more holes in your game, where there's like, I was a rotational guy and I left. He was like, well, I saw the good stuff from him. He didn't play all the time, but I saw the good stuff. Like, you know what? It's going to be a more projection pick. I think I like him. I could see him still going top 70, you know what I mean? Top 50 is a little rich for me right now. Just because I don't know what the upside is as a pass rusher. I don't know what that is for me as a pass rusher. And then Keith, I'll finish off. Deion Walker, watching tape on him, and I was like, okay, talk about flashes. Like, granted, Kentucky, same thing with Ole Miss. Kentucky, I don't know what they were doing with him either. Like, that's why I'm dropping off in coverage, standing up on the edge. I'm like, I'm not doing this with 6'7", 340 pounds. I don't know what the thought process was there, but and then I heard at the Senior Bowl that he was battling a back injury all season. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense that, the pad level and not staying low and driving. You got the back issue. And if it's all clear from the combine, I saw the flashes as a run defender. Same thing at the Senior Bowl. When he keeps his pad level low, he disrupts. Like as a run defender, we know he's going to bring as a pass rusher. At the Senior Bowl, like there's times where his pad level was low in that 2-eye spot, and he was destroying those interior offensive linemen, blowing up the run game. But it's like, okay, how often can we keep the pad level low? It's crazy. Fall from grace. He was a top 15 pick coming out the summer. You know what I mean? And things just did not go as planned in Kentucky this year. But I think this is a guy that if he, lasts into day 2, I don't think he's going to go round 1. He goes mid-second, early 3rd. I think somebody's going to be very happy with the value they're going to get with Deion Walker.
Yep, well, DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to always say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, we're reacting to some pro days. Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. Did these guys help themselves? Did they hurt themselves? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.